Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interview Mark Norman Harris. We learn all about his dream of starting his very own artist residency in Sicily. He's currently residing in Paris. We learn all about his work here, music, comedy, and much more in this fascinating episode. So welcome to the show, Mark. How are you today?
I am good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm great. I love that I spoke to you, I think a while ago. I tried to have you on the show, and then my husband bumped into you in a Paris cafe, as one does, and now we're back here chatting today. So I'm so happy it's gone full circle.
Yeah, it was a it was a nice thing. It was like, oh, you know, my wife has a podcast, and I looked it up and said, oh, I wrote you in June, and then you said send me an email, and I just. You know, it's hard getting work done on social media because it's like the distraction machine.
Yes,
and
I've done that a lot.
I have to accomplish a task, and before you get it done, you scrolled 12 reels.
It happens to all of us all the time. Well, I always like to go back to the beginning. So talk a little bit about where you're from and what brought you to Paris.
All right. So I am from Canada. And years ago, what brought me to Paris, I lived in Nepal, and I was there running a sort of artist house. I'd met this Norwegian girl, and she said, "Hey, Mark, like, we're in love. You should follow me to Paris while I go do my master's." And I said, "Oh, sure." And I got here, and she ghosted me within the first week.
No.
But, yeah. So, but then at that time I had my work holiday visa. I had some cash in my pocket, and I thought, well, I'm not going to go home with my tail between my legs. So I just kind of stayed. And then one thing led to another. That was like 6 years ago. So I've been here ever since.
Wow. I love that. Like, love brought you here, but it only lasted like 5 seconds, and then you just did your thing.
Yeah, well, it is as one must, you know. Plus, I prefer, I think, the lifestyle in Paris than, say, Toronto, which is where I'm from.
So before moving to Paris, you were in Nepal, and you were building like an artist residency there in the Himalayas. And then the earthquake destroyed all of that?
Yeah. So I've had this dream to have a rural artist residency for years. And I'd been going to Nepal of sort of on and off through university. And I was speaking Nepali, studying Himalayan religions, and I found a house in the mountains, and the guy said, yeah, it's 30 euros a month to rent. So I rented it for the year. There you go. Like, here's 300, got a discount. And then we spent the month basically painting it, putting new lights in, cleaning it, getting it ready. We had our kind of soft launch for the village. And the next day, I'm inside the house sweeping. The walls start vibrating, and I think, well, that's strange. Like, who's drilling into the foundation? I'm like, well, no, we don't have a drill. So I ran out of the house, and 30 seconds later, a crack shot up the side of the wall, and the thing just collapsed and pancaked. And yeah, so that's how the first artist house ended up.
That's
and it was
insane. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And like you literally just finished and then it's gone. Just like that.
Yeah. I was reminded of the the Tibetan Buddhist sand mandalas that they make, where they spend hours meticulously working on these mandalas just to sort of toss them into the river after. So there's a real lesson in impermanence in the Himalayan kingdom.
It wasn't meant to be.
No. So basically after that, I was doing relief work because there were a lot of people where I was. I think there were 9,000 people dead in the entire earthquake. And in the village where I was, there's about, I think, 300 or 400. So I stayed back there and ran some relief work, and then eventually relocated to the capital where buildings like weren't totally destroyed, and rented a house to run an artist program for a year.
So you were able to help the local people. I remember when all that happened, it was devastating. I mean, the city has never been the same. It was beautiful. Apparently, I'd never been there, but I heard it was incredible. And now, it's not the same.
Yeah, there were some ancient temples that were destroyed. I know one of the main things that happened in the villages is you had a lot of these stone houses, and they were quite picturesque. These sort of mountainside hilltop villages built in stone that now are kind of rebuilt in like corrugated aluminum. So yeah, it's not the same, but I do think some places have rebuilt more or less. And I guess right now the situation in Nepal has degraded again for sort of political reasons. But
yeah, you took away their TikTok, and the youths get mad at you.
Yeah, well, the reason for that was it was the sons of these political leaders and daughters, I guess, would use TikTok to show off all their wealth and their private jets and their trips to Dubai. And people would say, well, how does the minister of education, how is this kid a millionaire? And the only answer that you can get out of that is, well, government corruption. So people started using social media to denounce the corruption in Nepal. And the response of the corrupt leaders was then just to ban social media. And then the students went out on a protest, and the police opened fire and shot children in their school uniforms who were under 12 years of age, like in the head, and killed them. And that's when the city burst into flames.
I mean, it's just horrific, everything that happened, but they did overcome the government. Like they did.
Yeah.
The youths did, they got what they wanted. The government has crumbled currently.
Yeah. It's, I don't know how political you want to get, but yeah, it was a real case of, popular uprising that led to some kind of change.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well,
yeah,
fast forward.
Place,
yeah. I mean, it's insane. It is. If you haven't been following people, definitely look into this. It's fascinating. But fast forward back to Paris, once you arrived here, you were really big into the spoken word scene. So tell us more about that.
Well, I was looking for a place where I could, basically my main thing was I wanted to be a painter, and I got here thinking, oh, this is a good place to paint. And then I was looking for a spot where I could perform in English. And that inevitably led me to the spoken word. And from there, that's, for those of you that don't know, that's at Au Chat Noir on Mondays. It's a guy, David Barnes, who runs that. And it's been going on for well over a decade. And it's a spot where it's an open mic where people read or do music or do anything. So I kind of started in that. And then I found generally the spoken word tends to be a bit serious and heavy and depressing, because people, they use that almost to trauma dump and share really serious poetry. So I found myself trying to lighten the mood. So I'd come up and do a funny song in lieu of following up with more heavy poetry. And that kind of led me to doing stand-up comedy. And through the years, I've kind of moved through those spaces from spoken word and stand-up and concerts, and then traveling around, kind of self-producing my own tours through the English-speaking scene in Europe.
Yeah, you have toured across Europe. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, it's basically doing stand-up. There was quite an explosion of English language stand-up comedy in Europe. And it's for internationals, expats, just young people that speak English. It's as if they decided that this will be the language so that we can kind of have a Europe-wide comedy scene. Now, the touring, it's a glamorous way of saying, like, I go on Facebook, I reach out to showrunners in different cities, and I book a bunch of a mix of trains and planes and buses, and I go around and I do these shows. It's not too much to explain, but it's touring is lonely. It can be kind of miserable. I don't love the comedy scene all that much. I think I prefer music, but the comedy shows are easier to book than, say, a concert, because people will go out to a show if the title is funny, whereas if you're trying to make it as a touring folk musician, well, people they will go because of name recognition. They're less likely to take a risk on you.
Yeah,
So,
that totally makes sense. And what does your comedy focus on?
I don't. I suppose it's like most people. It's vaguely political. It's self-deprecating, and I do songs in it. So I've got a few comedy songs, but then in recent time I've been trying to shift out of that and get into like comedy writing for film and television, as a way of thinking like, all right, I'm going to be 40 eventually. Do I want to be still on Facebook begging all the beautiful Estonian people to come out to the comedy club? Yeah, I don't know if that's if that's the career path, if I could, apply the comedy to something else.
Yeah, and you recently co-produced and acted in My Parfait World, a comedy pilot about influencers. So talk a little bit more about that.
So that was years ago now, and basically we were trying to make a web series, or we were making a web series about the real life of like Parisian expats, more showing the bleakness of it, because I think there is this habit that we as expats here like romanticize, like, oh my god, I'm living in Paris. It's like if my mom, if her friends ask, oh, what does your son do? She'll just say, well, he's in Paris. She might not know exactly what I'm up to. So I wanted to sort of poke fun at the sort of idealized idea of living in Paris and showing off your best life, when the reality is the place kind of smells like pee and it's a nightmare doing administrative tasks here.
Yeah, exactly. We all know about that. I think I bring
Yeah.
it up a lot to my customers. They're like, oh, you're living the dream. You live in Paris. But I'm like, yeah, it's a little more fun to vacation here sometimes than to live here. Like, just come and go. It's nice too.
Right.
So talk a little bit about performing in over 10 different countries. Our audience is super different in Finland compared to Spain, compared to France when it comes to comedy and music.
Yeah, so definitely Northern Europe and Netherlands and Germany, they have a better level of English than people do in France. So in French, when I was doing comedy, a lot of times if you're touring, you're going to be doing it in French language. And then you kind of become the butt of the joke. So I play this character of, oh, I'm the foreign guy. And that's not my favorite role. I'd say my favorite place where I like to perform is in Estonia. There's a place called Heldeka in the city of Tallinn. And the people there, despite being a bit frosty, are very warm once you get to know them. So what I was doing when I was touring is basically I'd line up a bunch of shows, I'd take a mix of buses and trains, and I go out, and it's a bit more than a paid vacation, but not as much in terms of what you would earn by just staying home and working. And yes, it was a good way to see different parts of Europe and kind of get to better understand the different nuances. Certainly places like Latvia, because stuff that was under the part of the Soviet Union have a different approach to humor, I'd say, than people from the Netherlands. The Netherlands seem a little bit more up to date with like North American references, whereas people in the Baltic states are still, it's still a bit foreign to them.
So what is funny to them in the Baltics?
Um, Jokes about Russia, I don't worried about what I say here, but things like I said, "Oh, it's so nice to be here in the newly reunited Russian Empire," and then there's silence and say, "Oh, what? Oh, too soon?" And then you get a laugh because there is a real anxiety in the Baltic states that the Third World War is on its way, and as you go through the Baltic states, there's thousands of NATO troops that are based in Riga on the Russian border, and they train and do exercises prepping for some kind of conflict. So that was strange to be in Riga and see Canadian soldiers out at the Starbucks, or what was it?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, with all your travels around, like, I'm sure you're seeing all types of feelings and different types of humor happening. So yeah, I could see how that could be really interesting. When
Yeah,
you're in France, you don't notice these things.
In the Baltic states, you have I found you have this kind of battle for soft power, where I know in Estonia they were organizing a street festival for international arts, and the British Council was very interested in supporting it, but they wanted that festival to be happening in the Russian parts of Estonia so that they could kind of like bring previously like Russian speaking or Russian sympathizing Estonians under the umbrella of Anglo culture. So
Wow.
yeah, things like there was someone from the US embassy at an open mic, just kind of watching the English open mic. So I think there's forces at play in those countries that you wouldn't find elsewhere.
Definitely. That's fascinating. I've always wanted to get up north, and I heard great things about the Baltics.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So your work often mixes humor, music, and storytelling. Do you see yourself primarily as a comedian, a songwriter, or something else entirely?
I'm just a song and dance man, but I'd say I'm a storyteller. And the music, the stuff that I write tends to be narrative. The comedy that I make is narrative. So I use humor as a vessel, I think, because a lot of what I do is like social critique. I think we live in a society that is getting like ever more atomized. We're becoming divorced from our own nature through social media. Like we live in a world where we want to be like being seen is almost more important than actually like just being or seeing. And I find that kind of alienation to be very startling and problematic. So if there's some way through telling stories and through live performance, we can push back against this tendency that turns us into, like sort of soulless, lonely consumers that have forgotten how to sing, then I can do my part. And if we make stuff funny, then we can often slide in a criticism, so you don't sound just like an angry, ranting man on stage.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is the biggest thing for people today, to be seen. And like you said, social media is only pushing that to extremes. We're all just more isolated and, feeling unseen, but also addicted to these tiny little boxes in our pockets that make us sad.
Yeah.
So what role do you think comedy plays in helping people process life's unpredictability, like earthquakes, travel mishaps, and even moving countries?
Well, I think we have a few different approaches to the world, and comedy is almost a pain response, where it's a different way of like, okay, we have a tragedy in front of ourselves. Like, what can we do? Do we dwell on the tragedy, or do we try to find light of it? So I think it is something of a coping mechanism that can be very helpful for us to get through this difficult life. I do think on the other side, too much comedy can risk like irony poisoning, where a person no longer like sees something tragic, but just tries to find the joke in it. So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword in that. But as far as comedy, like helping you change countries and get through the world, I'd say it helps you find the humor in what can be these sort of cultural clashes that can actually be quite difficult.
Definitely. We all need to be able to laugh or we would cry.
Yeah, essentially.
So if you could give advice to a young creative who wants to take risks and experiment the way you have, what would you tell them?
Don't do it. I think it's it's a waste of time. No, but I would say the biggest thing, if you're trying to take risks and explore creativity, you have to think of it as a vocation, as if you're becoming a monk, as if you're taking on a vow of poverty and insecurity, and you have to be willing to put it before a lot of other things, because the result of having pursued a life in the arts is one that I've lived a very unstable life. I've lived a life that has a lot of travel in it. I may have missed a few key benchmarks in adulthood as a guy who's like 37 and is just barely now like a homeowner, and unmarried and no children and no vehicle. So you have to be prepared that if you go down the road, you may not be understood, you may not be appreciated, it may not work, and you're living for something that is ultimately an invisible thing, and you're not always going to see the results because of it.
I like the metaphor of being a monk, just dedicated to your craft. And like you said, there is no sure outcome when it comes to living a full-time creative life.
No, definitely not. And even when it does work, it's not like you don't get tenure where you say, oh, this thing finally works, so now I've got a career ahead of myself. I've had one successful project. So each new thing that you make is its own prototype. So it's definitely challenging.
So talk about your recent purchase in Sicily. You have plans to launch an experimental artist residency. Tell us more.
Well, I've had this dream for a while, and it kind of stems from, okay, what are the two problems that I see in the world? Well, it's this one of alienation and a lack of creativity, that we've become sort of passive consumers. There was a time, probably as early as the 1950s, before the radio, that people would gather around a piano for entertainment and sing collectively. And as we lose this stuff, we become just kind of couch locked and lonely, scrolling as people on our phones shout at us. And I don't like this vision of the world at all. I much prefer an idea where people are together and making things. I think community, and furthermore like micro community and creativity, are sort of the redemptive aspects of the world. So it was with that kind of thing running in the background that I'd been spending some time looking around for a house that was appropriate, where I could try to start inviting artists and making a little artist community. So I bought this house in a place called Troina, in a village in Sicily, where, I mean, they have houses for sale for as low as like 4,000 euros if you know the right guy. And I bought a house there, and I've been inviting artists for the last 2 summers to come and make work and then do little art exhibitions or concerts for the village. And my big dream is basically I want to find like maybe 10 artists that want to buy houses nearby, and then we can have our own little neighborhood, and we can host events and gatherings throughout the summer. So that's where it's at. I've got a lot of work to do. I have to fix my roof, but in order to do that, I have to understand the details of Italian project management and building permits and all that. So there's a lot of steps. Um,
Definitely. It's a big project, but it's really cool. And I love what you're talking about of bringing in these like micro communities of creatives, getting us off the screens, bringing us together and, one step at a time, obviously, but it's a huge project to have to build and find people too. So where are you finding your artists?
uh, I don't know. I meet people just being out in the world. Yeah, I think generally when I tell people I have a free house that I want to welcome artists to come stay in it and create work, it's very easy to find someone looking for free rent. So it's a terrible business model right now, but I think it's in the right direction. And other than that, I think of myself as just sort of being the first guy on the dance floor. And now I gotta keep dancing until we get a critical mass of people that want to get involved.
And how have the locals been responding to you hosting events, meeting the artists?
Like generally positive. There's obviously it's conservative village Sicily, so there's been a few times when generally like it's like artist girls wearing shorts that are way too short, where their butt cheeks are hanging out. That generally gets me weird looks, and they say, "Oh, who are the who are these women?" And like, "Oh, they're Mark's friends." But in general, I'd say they've been very supportive and very open, and yeah, very helpful.
So, looking back at Nepal and now Sicily, what draws you to build creative spaces rather than just perform within existing ones?
Well, I guess I started. This comes out of this idea of social practice, where as people were kind of tearing back the layers of what is art practice. One idea about art was that okay, it's performance. Well, then if the real thing that defines art is the audience, then I started thinking, well, what is the like the most abstract of that? Like, well, maybe the art project itself can be the creation of the art making community. And I had this idea that if you bring people together and have them gradually create art and leave artwork in the walls of the house, then the house itself becomes its own living museum, its own evolving art piece that as people come in and leave their mark, it develops into something. And as you make a community, what's beautiful about community is people start to self-identify with that community. And all you're really doing is offering the first nudge. And you can watch as something you may have started by just renting a house and throwing a party take shape in a way that you have no control over. And I find that to be very compelling and fascinating.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a great reason to create your own space. And how would you define creativity in your own words?
I guess creativity is about giving form to things. Um, I tend to think that we as human beings are often at odds with our environment. That is the basis of the human condition. And what we do through creativity is to briefly integrate with our environment. Like I'm taking something that is inside my head, let's say, and I'm mitigating it through my hand to create an image. Now, something that was in my mind previously is now on the page in front of me. And what I've done in that is created a sort of coherence between my imagination and the outside world. So I guess creativity is that act of not just coming up with ideas, but of bringing those ideas to fruition. And I think that act of creation is the most profound act that we can do in this world.
I completely agree. And what are your feelings about AI and creativity and how that's evolving?
Um, it's interesting because I guess AI is just a mirror to what it's been fed. I'm not too concerned about AI because if you're worried about, oh, AI is going to ruin music revenue, well, it's like Spotify already did. And before that, major music labels were already screwing artists over. I think AI is super fascinating right now. I don't believe that it's going to stay affordable for most people because of the sheer energy that it consumes. And I don't think that AI art is overly compelling. The problem with AI is that as it creates images that are indistinguishable from quote unquote real images, it compromises the integrity of the image, full stop. So it leads us to say, okay, well, if everything is sort of hyper real, what do we do? What do we look for to actually find a reality to engage in? And by sort of calling into question all images that we might see on media as being potentially AI generated and thus artificial, it almost lets us think, well, all images are ultimately some sort of artifice. It's divorced from what its innate nature was. And I think this, in the short term, might be a bit anxiety inducing, but in the long term, it's going to nudge people back into the real expression or real engagement with the world.
I completely agree. I think that it's, it's new. It was probably like when electricity started or, the radio came into play. It was terrifying, but, it might push people back into reality is my hope too, because
there's a story of a guy and he's writing in the 1800s. He's just got a pocket watch and he can't stop checking his pocket watch. Every 3 minutes, he opens it up and looks at the time and he's obsessed with it. So, we've been obsessed with gadgets for a long time now. And I think the human spirit is a bit more, resilient than the market forces would have us believe.
I sure hope so. I hope we haven't become too brainless with these little things in our pockets, these little screens. But yeah, and you're already seeing it with the young generation. I've heard like a lot of high schoolers, they're going back to like dumb phones, like flip phones. And
right.
They don't want to be on social media. So that gives me hope, a little bit of hope.
Yeah. So with the new restrictions that the state is rolling out against posting your opinions on the internet, I think you'll see people will be leaving the online spaces more and more to avoid getting any problems by sort of posting inappropriate opinions on social media platforms.
Yeah, it's currently the Wild West, so we'll see how it evolves. Well, I think that's a fascinating note to end on. And where can people connect with you, check out your artist residency, and more of your work?
Well, so my name is Mark Norman Harris. You can find me on Instagram. I guess you could call me. That number is 0779112857, and we can have a chat. Otherwise, in the summers, I'll be in the village of Troina in Sicily, and you're welcome to come check it out.
I love it. That's the first time I've had someone give out their phone number. Call them up, guys.
That's cool.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me today, Mark, and I can't wait to see what you'll do next.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.